Welcome to our webinar, How to Hire Right for Your Business by Rick Balzan of Balzan HR. My name is Ryan Kauth and I will be your host today. I direct the Wisconsin Small Business Development Center, or SBDC, at UW Green Bay. The Wisconsin SBDC is a statewide network of resources working with small business owners and their executives to facilitate businesses' growth and improvement and to help launch successful new companies. The no-cost business counseling and low-cost leadership development training at the Wisconsin SBDC at UW Green Bay is funded in part through a cooperative agreement with the U.S. Small Business Administration. Our website is uwgb.edu/SBDC. We call these monthly no-cost 30-minute webinars our Secrets to Success series, designed to help small business owners and their executive team members increase their financial success. At the conclusion of this webinar, we will share the upcoming webinar topics, and we encourage you to consider registering for those. We thank Mickey and Tim from First Business Bank and Michael Wentworth of TMR Associates for their partnership in developing and promoting these monthly webinars and for their dedication to small business success. There's Michael Wentworth there. After the webinar, you will be emailed a link to the recording of this webinar. During the webinar, you are invited to ask questions at any time. Please use the menu along the right side of your screen indicated here in the red circle. Type your question and hit enter. As soon as I see it, I will make note of it for the presenter to address toward the end of our webinar. And now I'd like to turn it over to our expert presenter this month, Rick Balzan of Balzan HR. Rick?
Thank you so much, Ryan. And welcome, everybody, and good afternoon. Today we're going to be talking about hiring those right people. It's an interesting topic, and I'm going to take it from a little bit of a different twist where there is something that a lot of times we do not give much thought to. And that is right in the beginning in regards to our corporate culture. You take a look at it and you say, corporate culture, what does that have anything to do with hiring the correct people? Well, let me tell you, I'll give you a little bit of an example. It wasn't long ago and they asked me to do a seminar. And the group that asked me to do that, they stated, could you come in and talk about corporate culture for a lunch and learn? I went, sure, that'll be no problem at all. Well, what ended up happening was I decided to do a little research first, and I took a look at corporate culture. And then I thought, hold it, aren't we really talking about workplace culture? So when I Googled it, looked up the definition, I guess not too much of a surprise, but the definition was not different. Where I sort of tended then to disagree and actually bounced it off the people that showed up for that webinar, for that seminar, and they stated the same thing. I said my belief was the corporate culture is, what do we have down for our mission, vision, value statements? How are we perceived by the community as an organization? And hopefully that's all positive and that they coincide with one another. But then when I took a look at the workplace culture, I went, okay, well, what really goes on within that organization? What's it like at the desk? What's it like on the shop floor? Is it truly trying to be what are we really projecting what we're trying to have people believe and what we are truly trying to be? A lot of times or often that does not match up, and that's where we may have a concern. So I think before we begin to even think about hiring, we have to ask that question. As an organization, who are we? Who are we perceived as? What are we trying to portray? And as we bring people on board, are they going to match what our true workplace culture is? And hopefully that does match our corporate culture. Those are the things that we have to take into consideration. One of the key things we need to do as an organization, too, in the beginning is, and this starts way before any ads are posted. It starts before we even decide who we're bringing on board, the position that we're recruiting for, and that is we need to spark our candidates' interests. So they need to be excited about us as much as we are excited about us. And again, as I stated, that starts way before the ad goes into place or before we even start mentioning that we have a position open. So how is our company perceived? Do we have a positive workplace culture? Are you the employer of choice? Are you looked at that way? I will give you one example. I was working with a client one time, and you know, over the course of time, and it takes you a while to learn this, but there are certain clients you don't work with anymore. And I was not from the area where I was working with them. And they looked great on paper. Their website looked great. They were very profitable. But the leadership in that organization, it was a different leadership style. And it's interesting. I'm not going to say a right or incorrect leadership style, just a different leadership style. And it was more dictatorial, etc. So when it came time to recruiting, in some way, shape, or form, we had to weed out those candidates that maybe wouldn't have fit that corporate culture or the way that organization is run. And to a certain extent, that's okay, but you need to know it ahead of time. And us as looking for people to bring on board, we need to understand that that may be the case, and we need to understand who we truly are. We're going to touch base on that again in a little while. You know, you have to prove you're the best. Provide people with a reason that they want to work with your company. Not necessarily for your company. Notice I said with your company. So we have to take a look at possibly who their supervisor is and what needs to be done in relationship to getting the right candidate that fits that mold as well. So keeping in mind, you want to show the positives of your organization when you're bringing somebody on board or when you start that recruitment process. You want to take a look at them and say, you know, are you going to be able to fit what our needs are? Can we fit what your needs are? Again, we have to put our best foot forward, and technically I should probably move this slide because we are not going to talk about that face-to-face interview first. But when it comes time for that, you know, what's the little things? What does the interview room look like that you bring people into? If you bring them into your office, is it a mess? You know, you don't want something like that to be the first thing that they see. Are the people up front that may greet that person when they walk into your building, are they familiar with the person may be coming in and the time, so that they could maybe even greet them by name? Oh, welcome, you must be, you know, so-and-so. Happy, have a seat, we'll be with you shortly. Is there a bottle of water I can get for you? Would you like a refreshment? Again, make them feel welcome. Because interestingly enough, so often we look at, you know what, that potential employee really needs to sell themselves to us. Well, guess what, gang? We have to sell ourselves to them as well. And I think that's a very important sign. I know that people where I walk in, I'm just so impressed where, be it a new client, be it somebody that I've worked with before, hey, Rick, would you like a bottle of water before you sit down? It just catches you off guard. They use you by your first name, they're relaxed with you, etc. So if you can portray that with them, that'd be wonderful as well. You know, you have to handle that task of hiring as professionally as you can and your staff can from start to finish as well. It's expected of them. So where do we find top candidates? You take a look at, you know, you ask coworkers. You take a look at the social media, be it LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, as you can see on the screen. Recruiters, are those some of the places we look for as well? Possibly staffing agencies, both for full-time and part-time, or temporary, I should say. Job posting, resume searches, Career Builder, Monster, JobNet. If you've never used Wisconsin JobNet, I'll tell you right now when I'm working with clients I have, that is the first place I want to post because one, it's free, and two, I've been in this long enough that I remember when JobNet was in its infancy. And I'd post on there and I'd go, oh my gosh, is this thing terrible to use? It caused concerns, etc. They do a wonderful job now because I use similar JobNet sites, Wisconsin or state-related sites around the country. And it's ironic how often, sometimes sites are very good as well and they're not used that much because I don't know if they're not publicized, etc. But again, JobNet is a great way to go and it's one of the better sites I've used as well. Trade journals. Some people forget that, and trade journal does not mean the paper copy, but they also have websites as well. I'll give you an example. One I use pretty often is when I'm looking for accountants and you use Wisconsin CPA, wonderful site, and they're focusing on people you may need, where they are who they are. It's not that you have to worry about a bunch of people applying that really aren't qualified because they know to go there and they know what's there. In some way, shape, or form, community centers, be it a community center, be it the job service site, be it the schools in the area. We have, there's plenty of colleges in the state of Wisconsin that you can post at and go on theirs. WisConnect is one, is an example where you hit all the state colleges, or the state technical schools, and then the Wisconsin website as well, where you can hit all the state colleges, the four-year schools. Community centers, newspapers. Newspapers are still a viable source. And now with newspapers being represented online, that's also not a bad place to go. And again, isn't it what we tell everybody? And here's where sometimes they're a little reluctant, but you always tell a person when they're looking for a job, they should tell everybody they know that they're out looking for a job. And people would say, well, of course you'd do something like that, because doesn't that help you? You know what, but we don't do that. We don't do that as employers. Get on LinkedIn, post that position on your site there, put it on your website, let everybody even verbally. You have vendors coming in and saying, hey, by the way, we're looking for a accountant. If you know of somebody, please run it, bounce it off of us. We'd really appreciate that. So you decide to post an ad, let's take that route, and you have applicants start applying, and you start receiving resumes. So how do you remember those applicants? One thing I like to do is put together a spreadsheet, and what I do on there is I give you can see it on your screen now, I give the date, I give the person's name, I give their attributes or lack of. Then to interview, yes or no, and then their phone number or contact information via, you may want to put that down, and you could also put down their email address, whatever works best for you. But with those attributes, and remember the position that you're applying for. I'll give you an example. You can see that there, the strong computer skills. They worked at admin for the last 7 years. One thing I like is I like longevity in positions. When I review a resume, that's always the first thing I look at. Some type of longevity, because the last thing I want is a job hopper. I had one person share with me one time, I thought this was sort of funny, where they stated, but Rick, that they're just looking, we might be the connect for them. You know what, they're just looking to find themselves. What if they find themselves with us? Then we lost maybe a good candidate. That's how I look at it, because if they've jumped around with 4 jobs in 5 years or 3 years, that's not the kind of thing I'm looking for. Then you take a look at the one below with Jack B. Nimble, worked at Door County Candle, and they were a wick tester. Would that be the person that you want for an admin assistant? So you really have to weigh and rate then the people that have applied. One thing I do too, keep this in mind, we're busy. We don't have time to do this. I have some clients that say, I want the gold medal treatment as an example. And they'll say, here's our stationery. I want you to send out a rejection notice, tactfully done to every person who's applied. Well, what I've done, very few people request that anymore. They did in the beginning. 10 years ago when I started this, they did that. But they don't do that anymore. What I do is write in the ad that I post, be it on JobNet, be it in the paper, be it Career Builder, Monster, wherever I may go with it, I'll put in there, if you are not contacted within, then you name the days, 10 business days, 14 business days, that indicates we are looking at other candidates. This way they know where they stand, and you don't have to worry about spending the dollars to get it out to them, to have them reply. And it keeps I've asked people that I've done that with, and I just say, what do you think of that? And they go, Rick, at least we know where we stand and that we're not selected. And you did your due diligence to keep us informed in some way, shape, or form. Now, things change if I interview a person. If I'd interview a person, I don't send a letter back right away, but I call them and explain to them I explain to them why they weren't selected. And they're just so appreciative. I give them an idea where they can work stronger on the job, where they can get better skills, etc., where they lacked a little bit. So again, it's an appreciative group when you do it that way as well. So you choose your top 5 candidates. Now what do you do? Well, I call them to schedule an interview, but I call them to schedule the telephone interview first. It's going to save some time. We're going to be able to weed some people out. And yes, even if it's the telephone interview, if they didn't get past that interview, I will still call them and explain to them why they weren't selected. And when you call, be aware of their telephone etiquette. For instance, one thing, I don't care what position you're applying for, except, well, maybe if I'm looking for somebody as, machinist in a factory, I might cut the person some slack. But if I'm looking for anybody in the service industry, if I'm looking for especially an admin assistant, maybe an accountant that's going to deal with the public a lot, I always listen for, hello, is John Doe there? Yes, this is he, or speaking. If the person answers and says, yeah, what do you want? Well, unfortunately, that's not quite the etiquette I was looking for. Now, in all honesty, I will cut people sometimes a little slack when I first call because I'm calling them to schedule a telephone interview. Now, I always try to answer professionally if I don't recognize the number, or even if I do recognize the number. But some people may not have that, not be in tune to that. So, I'll cut you a little slack. But then when I call back for that interview, you better be prepared as far as answering the telephone correctly, not having the dog barking in the background. That happened to me yesterday, as a matter of fact. I did an interview and the lady said, oh, can you excuse me for 1 minute? I'm going to just have to let that dog out because the barking is driving me nuts. Well, hello, it's something they should have thought of ahead of time. Don't mean to be rude, but it's a common sense kind of thing. When it comes time to asking the questions when you do book the interview, ask quality questions, to include maybe a couple that could be those deal breakers. One may be, I'll give you an example. And sometimes you have people, I've sat in a panel one time of interviews, and I had to call off the interview partway through and take a person out into the hall and just speak to them and say, you know what, you can't give the answer to the person when you ask the question. They said, I do that? I went, yeah. I said, there's a hesitation there. The person was asked a question in regards to how they handle a busy workload. And the person gave a very vague answer. So what the interviewer stated was, oh, so you're telling me that here's how you handle it and this and that and whatnot. And they go through and explain to her, yes, that's exactly it. Oh, good answer, she says. And she wrote that down. I went, oh my gosh, time out. So we ended up leaving the room discussing that. So the key thing is those couple deal breaker answers. Like, for instance, give me an example of how you use Excel. And if they're vague on that, say, well, do you know pivot tables? I've used that before. And they say, well, what do you mean by pivot tables? Is that part of this job? I went, nope, but since you gave an answer that you've used pivot tables and you showed me how you use them, I can tell you're pretty well advanced in Excel. So again, a little tidbit of information that's helped me in the past. Listen, listen, listen. Don't be the speaker all the time with the interview. Throw out the questions, just listen to what they have to say. Some people will pause, and we find it very difficult when there's a filler. We'll go to the next question or we'll start talking. Hey, silence is golden. Let them, I hate to say it this way, but let them suffer a little bit. They're going to be fine, so don't worry about having to speak all the time. And if they're paused for too long, then by all means say, come back, we'll come back to that question, let's move on to the next one. Then don't forget to come back to it, because that's going to be important as well. So why are you considering leaving your current employer? Here's some questions that may be worth looking at. Why are you considering leaving your current employer? Why this position? Describe your skills in using Excel. I gave you that little example before. How do you like to be coached or supervised? Notice that the question, that one, there's no wrong answer, but you know the manager or the supervisor you're hiring for, so you're going to want to make sure that that fits that person's mold. Now, if your supervisor is not a good supervisor, well, there's where you call Ryan up and then you do some supervisory training as well through this organization, because that happens quite often where we maybe don't hire we hire the person that's best at their job technically, but are they the best supervisor? So keep that in mind as well. What do you know about our company? I've had that one time where a person called, I explained who I was, and we booked the appointment. Called back, she says, now fill me in about your company. Can you tell me a little more? What do you do there? And I'm going, oh my gosh, I gave you that before and you didn't do your homework? I'm sorry, the interview, I went through the interview very quickly. I didn't embarrass them, but I also stated to them that, this is going to be a tough sell because here's what happened. Describe your ideal boss to me. What kind of person do you like to work for? Again, not your boss, but the candidates whose boss, who they'll be reporting to. And again, no wrong answers, but there are going to be some correct answers. Share with me your greatest work-related success story. And then lay on line, hey, when did you drop the ball? When did you blow it? Ask them that as well. People don't expect it, and sometimes they come on. If the answer is, oh my gosh, when did I blow it? Where do I start? Yeah, that's not the right one to pick. But you know, if they do have an example for you, great, more power to them. Share an example when you needed to be highly organized. You know, if the position calls for that, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a work related. You know, they may say that, you know, I was a Girl Scout leader for a while, or I was a Boy Scout leader, and oh my gosh, it took so much planning. Here I was working full time, and I still had to do that. Wow, great example and great answer. Very well could come out of that, so keep that in mind. Next slide, reference checks. Gee, I thought there were laws regarding those. What can be? Is there anything that can't be asked? Yeah, there are things that can't be asked. You have to stay away from the statements that are discriminatory. Age, gender, religion, political preferences, etc. You can't ask questions like that, but you can ask more than just name, rank, and serial number. Hello, here's your name, what's your position, how long did you work there, are you eligible for rehire? You can go into different, here are some of them I'd use. What are their strengths? Where could they use improvement? How do they get along with others? Here's my favorite one. Being a supervisor, how should I work with them so they reach their fullest potential? Then sit back and listen. You know, if you know the supervisor and they go, you know, you're going to get a good morning in the morning if you're lucky, and hey, thanks for a great day at the end, but that doesn't happen too often. Okay, if they're a person that needs to be nurtured, they need to be a person that needs to be followed up upon all the time. They're going to have tons of questions in the beginning. That's okay, but if it's constant and that's what happened, then you know, that may not be the candidate for you. And then on the scale of 1 to 5, on a scale of 1 to 4, how would you rate them in the following? And then I have a list of questions as well, and that can be job related. You know, what were their, how would you rate them compared to other people in relationship to maintaining confidentiality, their work ethic, their being on time? And the answers I love were sometimes with a 1 being terrible, unacceptable, and a 5 being excellent, how would you rate them the following? Somebody will say, well, you know, can I give them a 4.5 because they were really good, but nobody's perfect. Sure, put down 4.5. I always leave a little space in the margin too to type up the extra notes that they add, because people will give you more than the number. Good references will give you more than the number, and they'll actually speak of what needs to be done. So, and again, references are touchy. As a matter of fact, I have to spend the afternoon doing some references today, and yet I make it critical. I'm going to give you a story of what happened to me one time. And this was years ago, and nowadays you don't do that as much. But what happened was, if they put a friend down or a relative, well, okay, that's fine. It's not what I was looking for, but that's fine. So I called this person's best friend, and ironically enough, I knew the person who interviewed, but I did not know the friend. And because I was in a business years ago as well. Okay, I'll level with you. I ran a tavern in the state of Wisconsin. Who isn't in tavern business in the state of Wisconsin, right? So I ran a tavern, and this was one of the customers. And she wasn't a customer that drank a lot by any means. She was also one that came in with the soda, came in with her boyfriend, now it's her husband, by the way, and just the nicest person you'd ever want to meet. I went, wow, this would be perfect. I was working in healthcare, and this was for a patient accounts position. So I called her ref. She interviewed excellent. She interviewed face-to-face excellent. And so I said, I'm going to call the references. And the boss who I was doing this for said, oh, why even bother? No, I think it's important to do that. So I called. Now remember, this was her best friend. And I said, yes, she applied for a job at such and such healthcare, and it's in the patient accounts department. And the lady was very nice, and she said, patient accounts, does that mean dealing with people, what they owe for their bill, et cetera? Do they have to go to collections, that whole thing? Yeah, exactly. And she says, oh, she's a wonderful person, but I'd never hire her for that because she cannot keep a secret. People's financial situations are going to be out over the community in no time. If I were you, I'd stay away from her. Well, with a best friend like that, who needs enemies, right? But it was the most valuable reference I ever had. And it's interesting because then I picked another reference because I went, okay, this was negative. What's the other one going to be? And it was positive. And but when it came time to the question regarding confidentiality, they hesitated as well and said, you know, she has difficulty keeping secrets. I go, well, thank you very much for your input. That was very beneficial to us. So needless to say, that person didn't get hired, but it saved us a ton of trouble. So again, don't be afraid to ask those tough questions. And yes, you are allowed to ask them. as long as it's justifiable. And if a person passes on a question, that's fine. Again, with the reference though too, stay away from, what was their attendance, that's fine. Oh, what caused that attendance? Was it because of sick children? Or, you can't go that route. You have to, because it's none of our business if they have children. And numerous things. Another example I give when I'm hiring somebody, you don't even want to know where they live or where that's located, or mention that you may know neighbors that live near them, because you can get into trouble as that as well. So, stay clear of questions that are not work-related. Even with the references, the things you can see listed there, they're always work-related. So make sure that your questions in interviewing and reference checking stay work-related as well. So that brings us to the conclusion. So thank you so much for your time. And again, Ryan will give you the information on how to contact me should you need to. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Rick, excuse me, Rick, thank you again so much. Great information. Lots of little tidbits in there that are really helpful, in the hiring process, specifically for your company. This is how you can get a hold of Rick. You can email him. You can go to his website. And I would really like you to encourage you to go to his website and obtain a free HR assessment. I actually have it right in front of me. It's 2 pages. It would take you a couple minutes to look at it, but it's a really comprehensive look at what are you doing in your company right now, and maybe where are some of your shortfalls. For instance, there's categories under such as employment. Do you have job descriptions? Administration. Do you have an employee handbook? Grievance, discipline, and termination. Do you have a procedure for this? Safety and health. Are you aware of the state's safety requirements for your job? Compensation, training, benefits. There's an opportunity to rate your HR function, at your company. And then what does your HR function actually cost? Those are great things to know for any small business owner, and really any business and any nonprofit, any government entity out there as well. So again, Rick, thank you very much. We do have time for one question, and the question that came through is, it's that where do I start, Rick? Question. If I really need to kind of look at everything, I think one of the ways you could start is, looking at that HR assessment and really saying, taking a look at what you need to do to start. But, let's say someone's ready to hire someone right now, but maybe they don't have all the ducks in the row. What's the best thing to do first, Rick?
The first thing I'd do if it was a situation like that is I'd go to JobNet, open up an account, and do a resume search on there, because that's no cost either, and that would give you an idea of just who may be out there. For this person, at no charge, give me a call, and I can walk you through that, or I can walk you through some other options you may have. Because the one thing to keep in mind for everyone is make sure that you're supposed to take your time in hiring, and by all means try to do that whenever you can, so you can have those ducks in a row ahead of time so you don't run into that problem. Because all too often I run into that too, and I say, when did you need the person? Yeah, yesterday. Not going to be done by tomorrow either. So
fantastic. Thank you, Rick, so much. And we're pretty much out of time for the webinar today. But again, I really appreciate your willingness to share all this information with us. It's very important. So
you're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. Next month, our webinar will feature Brian Schwaller of Ecomanity, who will present how to offset rising energy costs. In November, Scott Bushke of Cornerstone Business Services will present how to buy a business. And if you need more information on hiring, you can certainly give Rick a call. But if you want some kind of an in-person workshop, we do have a workshop coming up titled Hiring Wisely, and that's going to be in Green Bay on Tuesday, November 11th. And you can register for training workshops and all of our upcoming no-cost 30-minute webinars at uwgb.edu/SBDC. We also have several past webinar recordings there on sales, marketing, business ownership, leadership, and professional development. So in closing, I would very much again like to thank Rick Balzan of Balzan HR. Thank you, Rick. Mickey and Tim at First Business Bank, and Michael Wentworth of TMR Associates. And thank you all for attending. Now, go hire right for your business. Have a great day. This concludes our webinar.